Now, this is going to take pictures of us, is that
Yes.
right? So where do we look? At you or?
Me or each other or anywhere.
Make believe you're not
Don't stare at the camera
get your picture taken.
particularly, but anywhere, yeah. This morning, we were with Mr. and Mrs. James Ewen in their home on the corner of Tyler City and Lambert Road in Orange. We'll talk about the house a little later because it's an old one and it's one that's seen a lot of orange and a lot of family. Mrs. Ewen's family has been part of this part of the world in Orange and in Milford and with Yale and with very much connected in it, going very far back. You were telling us about the Reverend Mr. Andrew and the treats, and fill us in on what some of your people.
Well, I was an Andrew, and my father was Wellington Andrew, and we are direct descendants of the Reverend Samuel Andrew, who was one of the founders of Yale College and was the minister in the Church of Christ Congregational now in Milford for 52 years. The line has gone down till it came, all of Milford, all of Orange was part of Milford at one time, although finally they called it North Milford. And our ancestors came from there and settled on Old Tavern Road in the Bryan House, which was built by a man in Milford, and took him about 3 years. And somewhere along the line, they married into the Andrew family, and that's the original Andrew family. My great-grandfather, Mr. Merwin Andrew, bought this farm here, present farm, for his son Dennis Andrew, who was my grandfather, and he settled here in 1840. The land was bought in 1838, and I have the original deed. Then he worked the farm, and my father grew up on it. He went to Yale College and graduated. Went to California for 10 years as a civil engineer, and came back, wanted to see his parents, so he came back, and he found his father not well at all and needed him, so he gave up his job as a civil engineer, became a farmer in Orange and known as one of the best farmers in Orange. He then married my mother, who was Flora Treat, and she was a direct descendant of Governor Robert Treat. And they came here, settled in this farm. She brought Anna Cawley with her, who was like a grandmother to all my family, although she was not a blood relative. She had lived with my grandmother, Sarah Booth Treat, up on Grassy Hill Road. And when my mother came here, she came here and made this her headquarters. She taught school down in the First District School of Orange and did many other things. She was a very talented musician, composed music, and she wrote poetry. Quite a number of their poems were sent to the Ansonia Sentinel and printed. And she did all kinds of fine needlework, and she did painting, as far as I know, without any lessons. She painted the picture of my grandmother here, just from, I don't know what,
just from what she saw.
Yeah,
what she knew.
she just painted that. And then my husband, well, we were married in 1934 and had 3 children, which we raised and sent to college, and 2 of which are out of the state now, but I have, what do you say about it? I have 5 grandchildren.
Sure.
2 of which come here every summer and spend the summer on the farm and love it very much. And I have a brand new grandson that we hope will be coming to the farm in a few years.
That's all right. That's all right. You know, this is, can't very many people go visit Grandma on the farm anymore, can they?
Well,
that's a part of growing up that it's not a privilege very many have anymore.
He calls up, they call occasionally from California, and when he does, he wants to know how each and every animal is here. He has them all named, and he really is very helpful when he comes here in the summer. He worships my husband and tries to help him every way he can. He was slinging bales of hay last summer, even though he was only 10 years old. So.
That sounds like a good thing. You grew up in Orange when it was a very different kind of community than it is now.
That's right, yes. I walked to school. I went to the Mary Tracy School, but I walked there because I lived too near to be picked up by the bus. And
it's about the bus.
The bus was originally horse-driven. This one was driven by a man that went by Tower City Road, but I well remember Mrs. Anna Buckholz from Indian River Road hitching up her horses every morning and picking up the children on her route and taking them up to the Mary Tracy School. Besides keeping a farm running, milking cows, her husband died very young and left her with 4 young children, only one of which was a boy, Ray Buckholz. Mrs. Tracy from Turkey Hill area used to drive the bus. And we used to walk over through muddy roads to school. Right near the railroad track goes through between here and the center, and it's very swampy there, and it used to really be muddy there in the spring. But we wore rubbers and we made out. Right. I walked to the church over in the green many times. In fact, I walked up to the Derby Turnpike to take the trolley to New Haven when that was just a pretty much a dirt road. And when I went to high school, I had to walk over to where Cadwell's pharmacy is now. There was a railroad station. The trains went from here to Derby and back, and I walked over and took the train to New Haven, and from there I got the trolley and went to West Haven to high school. And the first year, when I was a freshman, we had to have a double session, so we went in the afternoon, and when I came back home, it was dark. It was towards 6 o'clock, and I used to walk back through the railroad track and through a cut we call the rock cut there, and then my sister would come over and meet me. And then we walked over there many times, and if there was any trains coming, we used to get ourselves into the little rock cuts there and hold on to our skirts till a train went by.
Oh dear.
I don't think I'd like to do that today, but we did do that then. And every time we wanted to go to a show, we walked up to the Derby Turnpike and took the trolley to New Haven. And then after the trolley disappeared, buses went. Now, well, I guess there still are some buses that go to New Haven from Derby. But then we'd walk back, take the last trolley out at night, and walk home, which was about a mile and a half. I think today that the children hardly know how to walk.
That's true. That's practically a lost art, I think. And you were telling us about the mail delivery and the store, the one store in Orange?
Yes, it was just
in
one
this area.
One store in Orange. That was Scobie and Son, and that was right across the road from where the Cadwell pharmacy is now. And the mail would come out on the train. We had a station agent there, and then he took the mail bag over to the big U.S. post office, which was in this store, this little store, all on one floor. Mr. Scobie would deliver once a week. He delivered over in Tyler City there with a horse and wagon. And then other than that, you went over there and picked it up. And the mailman was Mr. Bert Clark, who lived right there in the green, across from the green. And he took the mail in his mail wagon, they called it. It was a white covered wagon so that he was protected in the winter from rain and snow. And it had a horse, and then he delivered that. We had the mail delivered here in front of the house. And
tell us about Tyler City. And what was Tyler City? It was in Orange.
yeah,
Right. How did it come by that name? What?
well, if you're going to interview Kurt Sperry, he could tell you much
He
more
knows more
about
about
that than
Tyler
I
City.
could. Yeah, he's quite knowledgeable about that. 'Cause he
Save
grew
that
up
for
there.
him.
Yeah, I would.
Okay. All right. This is something that, well, it's in the name, of the street name.
Yeah.
And yet it sort of doesn't exist anymore.
That's right, yeah.
It's kind of a curious thing. Yeah. So you grew up on this farm.
I did. My father before me was born here in this house, and I was too.
Well, you, other than the fact that of what you remember, you both have done a great deal of study and research, and have gotten to know a great deal about farming and the way it was carried out before it became mechanized and agribusiness and all the other things.
Tell them how we used to drive the cows from here to Oxford.
You tell them.
Yeah, tell us how you used to drive them to Oxford.
Yeah, tell them first that my
How far is it to Oxford?
About
19 miles.
It's
My
19
father
miles.
had a farm up there.
19 miles plus 3 miles.
19 miles plus 3 miles. How did you drive why did you drive the cars?
Well, we used to drive them up there because there's pasture up there. We drive up in the spring. We start here about 8 o'clock in the morning and go up through Woodbridge. And each farm on the way up would have 2 or 3 to go to pasture, so they'd put them in with ours.
Uh-huh.
So by the time we got to maybe to Seymour, we'd have about 60. So we'd drive these all the way up to Seymour and cross over under the railroad tracks and take them up to Oxford.
And every small boy along the way. Yeah.
And then and then in the fall we'd have to drive them back again.
Yeah. They'd stay up there, and somebody would have to stay up, and presumably they'd have to be milked and cared for.
No, it's all dry cows.
These are
all dry
cows.
cows.
Or heifers growing up.
I see. Okay.
And
the
different farmers around didn't have enough pasture here for them.
I see.
And they want to get rid of them for the summer.
I see.
So we had a caretaker up there a good part of the time that lived there, and we'd go up, several times and see how they were during the summer. And we'd have a horse and buggy that would follow along, and then we'd drive home at night after we got them all up there. But it was quite a job keeping them off people's lawns.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Was this primarily a dairy farm, or what?
Yeah.
It still is and always has been.
Right.
Is that?
Yeah, we used to drive as far as Roxbury too sometimes.
For the pasturage.
Yes, my father raised the cattle, and we produced the milk, and then we delivered it to New Haven. And this was all raw milk. But so when it became a law that it had to be pasteurized, we sold it out eventually. First we took it to West Haven. We sold it to West Haven, to the West Haven dairy, and then they pasteurized it. But when we first had a milk route in New Haven, retailed it, and had a milkman that would go in with it. And my husband had some experiences doing that. But
retailing the milk.
Oh,
but when we had the snowstorms.
Oh, yeah. 1934 we had quite a bit of snow. Everything was tied up. Yeah. must have.
It was drifted here and it
Yeah.
went through the...
I couldn't go down Tyler City Road because the snow was about 10 foot high. Out of here.
Yeah.
It all blew in. So we had to cross through the fields with the sleigh to bring the milk to New Haven. Then on the way back we couldn't.
1934. That's incredible.
Was it
Yeah.
then?
On the way back we couldn't come up Downingtown Hill because there was so much snow. So we had to turn around and go up Derby Avenue. When we got to Derby Avenue, we followed the trolley tracks, but we forgot about the trestle. We got halfway there.
Over Derby.
Over Chestnut Ridge, it was a trestle.
Oh.
Over-
So the
Where those
trolley-
great big rocks are now.
Yeah.
Oh, uh-huh.
Mhm.
So we tried to go over the railroad tracks because there wasn't much snow. In the meantime, had to lead the horses all this way because they wouldn't go through the snow. So we got to the trestle, so then we had to go all the way back again, get out of the road again, come up the
Oh.
road because of the ties in the spaces between them.
Oh, and the horses couldn't...
Couldn't go through.
Oh.
Couldn't go through there.
So it took us about 12 hours to get home.
From the time they left,
New
it
Haven.
means.
What'd you do the next day?
We start over again.
You just barely got home in time to milk
Yeah.
and leave
Go
again.
back again.
Oh. Well, that's a different... You've had some pig scrapers and some other things here that are...
Well, he's talking, now he's showing the pig scrapers.
Yeah,
You
so
meant- you
we're going to
said
ask
something
him
about
to
that.
describe some of these farm implements, and the more you can tell us about how they were used and
Yeah.
why. Yeah.
Well, see, a pig is a different animal than cows. Cows you skin, but with a pig you have to scrape the hair off. So we use these what they call candlesticks to scrape off the hair.
Well, yeah, but tell them how you kill them and dunk them in hot water.
Yeah, you have to dunk them in hot water,
Real hot.
not boiling water, just hot enough so it loosens the hair. And you pour rosin all over the pig first.
Rosin.
Yeah, so that makes the hair stick together a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So then you use the scraper and you scrape it all off, and it comes out by the roots. The hair comes out by the roots. So when you get when you get the hair all off the pig, it comes out just like your skin.
Uh-huh. Pig skin.
And that's the rind you see that you have on.
That's right on. Did you ever have a smokehouse here?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we got one in the chimney down cellar.
Still have one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can walk into our chimney's 14 foot square.
Yeah.
We have a place where they used to make soap
Mm-hmm.
with the iron pot there. Then we have a place, there was a fireplace on one side, and then there's a smokehouse where you can walk in the chimney
Yeah.
and hang up your meat on these little hooks.
Can you remember this being used?
Yeah, I used it.
You
He's
used it.
used
Yeah, I
it.
used
I don't remember my parents using
Well,
it.
we used to smoke it with this hickory and corn cobs.
And corn cobs.
Yeah. And you just make smoke. You're not supposed to make a fire.
Right.
If you make a fire, see the fat from the pork drips onto the
Uh-huh.
fire, then you start a fire.
Uh-huh.
So the main thing is just to keep it smoky.
Right. But
He's put it in salt brine too.
First you put it in salt brine for 6 to 8 weeks.
6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah. Then you take it out and dry it and then smoke it.
And then smoke it.
Yeah.
How long does it take to smoke a ham, for instance?
Well, it depends on the color. If you want it real dark, you do it a little longer.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on how your fire goes too, how much smoke you're getting from your fire.
Yeah, about how much?
Oh, 3 or 4 days.
It's a long process.
Yeah. The way they do it, I guess they just wave it over the smoke.
I think so. You know, you still have to refrigerate them, don't
Yeah,
you? And
yeah.
that was the whole idea.
Well, we used to take
preserve
hams and put them in a stocking and hang them up in the attic and use them in the wintertime.
And that was, what time of year did you butcher?
Well, it was mostly in the fall. It's when
Uh-huh.
the cold weather.
For winter,
Because
yeah.
we didn't have the refrigeration we have today.
Right. So this was speaking of
In winter too.
in winter. Yeah.
January, February. Kill
Uh-huh.
'em.
And then would be there.
We used to have sides of beef up in the attic too, because it would be cold up there and they'd keep real good. And then we'd buy a side of beef. We didn't kill our own, and then we'd cut off what we wanted, steaks
see.
or whatever part
It
of
could
the.
be stored in the
And we had it
cold.
hanging from the rafters.
Uh-huh.
We had a wheel up there, wasn't it, Jim?
Yeah.
That you would hang it from that.
Uh-huh. Well, you had a lot of people to feed.
Yeah, usually
Running
we
a
had.
farm, it just took a lot more labor than...
Yeah, we boarded men a great deal of the time. Most of the time. Sometimes we had one man, sometimes two or three. And they would be hungry. They would eat well 3 times a day.
I'm sure they did, yeah. Yeah.
Then my mother because she had a big family and had the hired men, she most of the time had a hired girl, they called it, who came over from usually Europe, some of the Slavic countries, and they called them greenhorns. It was not detrimental, but it was just that they didn't know the language or your ways of doing things, but they learned very quickly and were very good help.
Now, another way of dealing with refrigeration problems, is that the ice tongs you had
Yeah,
there?
we used to have to get ice in we start around the 1st of December and run it almost all winter. We started an ice house, and we used to have a horse that pulled the ice up the skids into the ice house. And after we got the ice all in there, we'd have to cover it all over with sawdust on the side walls on the top. That was insulation, kept the ice from melting.
Was your ice house above ground, or was it
Above ground.
dug in, or was it just
No, it was
above
above
ground?
ground.
How long
You
would that
piled layers
stay?
on layers.
Well, it depends on how cold a winter we had. Generally, a cold winter would have enough ice for all winter.
All summer.
All summer.
All summer.
Yeah.
And then you'd go up with a wheelbarrow or whatever and bring out a couple of cakes at a time and wash all this sawdust off it and put it in the barn, in the tank, to refrigerate our cans of milk. And then we'd bring 1 keg of ice into the cellar where we had a ice box built to hold big cakes of ice like that. And my mother would take her food that needed to be refrigerated downstairs after every meal to keep it. So
Well,
it's there was a lot of work in those days in everything you did, but usually you had pretty good help.
It was pretty cold on the ice pond too when you're getting ice. Jelly was always below 0. We got ice. We'd have to work on the ice out on a pond.
You had to saw it first.
You had to
into-
saw it by
into
hand.
cakes
and then pull it out and
Yeah.
load it.
with a
Yeah.
horse. Pull it
We'd have these long pikes, the sticks with hooks on the end to push the ice. We have some out in the barn. They call them pikes. They push the kegs of ice down to shoot, and then just push them up into the wagon.
Yeah.
That jelly run
That's hard
about
work.
3 foot square, the ice.
How much does a 3-foot square of ice weigh?
Well, about 100
A lot,
pounds.
yeah.
100 pounds, yeah.
Yeah, I can remember what a 25-pound cake looks
Yeah.
like, and it's not not all that, it's not so
We
big.
used to carry 25 kegs of ice to a load of horses, wagon.
The horses worked pretty hard too.
Neighbors helped each other, though, in those days. A great deal. We had a cousin, Bill Andrew, over on Racebrook Road, and he'd help us get our ice house filled, and then we'd help him get his ice house filled. And also Clark's over there had a little pond back of Tower City Road, in back of the
Library.
well, down from the library, in back of the railroad track that went through. And if we had our work done, we helped him too.
Okay.
So.
Maybe this would be a good time to talk about the barn raising.
Oh yes, we had an old barn here that housed the cattle. I don't know how many they had. I don't know how many they had, but anyway, my grandfather had that. And then after my father came back home. Let's see. He graduated from Yale in 1868, and he was 10 years in California, so that's 1878, and they were married right after that, I guess maybe about 1880 or something. So he saw the need for expanding, I guess, and so in 1898 he built the present barn that we have now and made room for 40 cows to be housed in stanchions. So in order to do this, everybody helped in. Well, he got a carpenter, and he got all the framework together, and they built the framework and pegged it together, and then they got all the neighbors in town to come over on a certain day and raise the barn, they call it, and all the neighbors would come, and then my mother would, this was in warm weather, and my mother had tables set up outside in the lawn, and she would feed all the people, and we have a couple of pictures of that, and then they could put it up, you see, in a short time. And there was a couple of men here in town that worked at it. Mr. Dwight Russell and Mr. Howard Stevens were carpenters and jack of all trades, I guess, and they did the preliminary work, you know.
All the timbers were cut here. They didn't buy them. They cut them here.
Cut them here.
Yeah.
And
all except the siding. The siding was bought, but the main part of the barn was cut on the plate.
and
Right here from your own woodland.
Yeah. People are amazed that see it now. Men that step into our barn are just amazed at the framework of it. And of course it was pretty high because he built it for loose hay. In those days, they didn't know about baling hay, so he had to have it high. And he had a track, iron track, going along the peak of the barn, and we had a hay fork that would you'd put on the load of hay and clamp it together, and then horses would pull this rope that ran through a pulley, and to a certain point, and this would go up until it hit the peak. Then you had to
they go along a track and you could pull a rope and dump it wherever you wanted to.
dump the hay where you wanted to. But
that
it would
still
all
work?
be in a big bunch. Yeah, it could.
Does it?
Yeah.
It could, but we don't use it now. It would all drop in a big bunch, and then we'd have men up there with forks, hay forks, and they'd spread it around so the whole mound would be spread out evenly. Otherwise, you couldn't get it out very well when you wanted it.
I see.
See, these beams are 36 feet long. That's pretty hard to get up.
That's pretty high. It's a big beam.
To get a piece of wood that long today.
Right. And that was from trees that grew on this property.
Yeah.
Felled and...
Also, years back, they did a lot of clearing of the land. Even my father, I think, did. But some was done before, don't you think?
Yeah.
So it's made a lot of our fields more productive, you know. And then we built stone walls with them. All these stones were taken to the stone
They had to do
wall.
something with the stones they picked up, so they built stone walls to keep the cows out from going to the fields.
And the stones just came from the fields?
Yeah, so it did two purposes. It picked them off the field and it built a fence to keep the cows out of the fields.
Or in it.
Yeah, and that's been done in Connecticut for as long
Years
as there have
and
been
years.
settlers here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the Indians used them.
Did they use stone walls too?
Yeah.
The Indians did.
Yeah.
I hope
That
you're
I
right
didn't
about
know.
that. I should know.
Yeah, they used it for forts. Use it for landmarks too.
Well, there are plenty of them.
Yeah.
You know, you want to use
So
what's
that-
at hand. There's no shortage of stones
Yeah.
in Connecticut. There really are. Well, you